Well, yesterday, the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs conducted a hearing on the origins of COVID-19, where Dr. Stephen Quay testified why he believes the coronavirus originated from a lab in Wuhan, China. Among the reasons that inform his view are the timing of the virus, data from the Wuhan wet market, and lack of evidence consistent with a natural origin, and specific features of the virus. Now, given the lack of transparency from the Communist Party, we may never learn definitively what caused the virus to emerge in Wuhan. But will U.S. taxpayers ever learn if our government funded the research that led to this deadly outbreak? Join me now to discuss this and much more, Congressman Tim Burchett. He serves on the House Oversight and Accountability Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee, as well as the Transportation and Infrastructure Committees. He represents Tennessee's 2nd Congressional District. Congressman, welcome back to the program. Always great to see you.
Thanks for having me back on, brother. And I appreciate y'all putting the truth out there.
Well, we're still debating the origins of the COVID virus. Years after it emerged. But there's some things we do know. We know the government misled us in some of the information that they put out.
Yeah, they most certainly did, and it most certainly started in those labs. We've been told that I've been told the Chinese are developing a genome, a genetic map, if you will, of our population, and what they plan on doing is selectively releasing, I think, a biological entity into our environment to subdue or kill a certain segment of society. Just imagine, Tony, if you will, if they developed a genome, and they developed a virus that could infect, say, 16 to 30-year-old women in America, immediately stop us from repopulating and of certain races even. And yet we've known they're doing this for quite some time. I've had legislation filed under Democrats and now under Republicans to actually stop us trading in genetic information with the Communist Chinese. And just until, I think, last week, I had a one-on-one with the speaker and told him what was going on and that my bill was held up, and they're finally going to shake it loose. But this is the kind of thing we've got to worry about, and we should worry about, because the Communist Chinese do not have our best interest at stake. They will literally sell us the rope we'll hang ourselves with. If you remember during COVID, who had all the masks, who had all the material, who had everything, and then this thing just keeps snowballing. We have a very short memory in our country. I always say we want our pizzas in 30 minutes or less, and that's about our dadgum attention span.
Based on what you know, Congressman Burchett, do you believe that this could have been, and I'm not asking you for definitive because we don't have all that evidence, but based on what you know and what you just shared, could this have been kind of a test by the Chinese Communist Party in releasing this virus?
Yes, sir. I think it was what I think was, it got out. And then when it did, they didn't do anything to warn us about it, and they let it go. I was told by an old intelligence person early on, when I was first at Congress, and this fella, it was kind of one of those, I'll write about it in my book, but a guy said to me, he said, "Congressman?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "We've been watching you." And I said, "Oh, really?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Are you following this COVID thing?" I said, "Yeah." I said, some virus that they're saying's out there. Now, this was early on, mind you. And he said, "You know where it was developed? You know where it's found?" And I said, "Yeah, well, the name Wuhan or whatever." And he said, "You know what's there?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And he said, "Well, it's their biological warfare testing facility." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "You know what the one problem China has overall?" He said, "People are just living too long." And I got to thinking, in the 70s, they even contemplating dropping a nuclear bomb. It went to their highest levels of government, to eliminate, to test it, to see what's out, see how it would affect, what would happen. on their own people. And so, fast forward now, and you're looking at this thing. It's a whole lot cleaner way to do it, and it takes us out and reduces some of their population, and that's just the way they think. Americans are trying to think like the communist Chinese have got basically a godless nation, and there's no correlation there. And I said we better take this serious. And the main reason we're not doing anything about it right now with legislation like myself, I expect some lobbyist has a chairman or somebody or a staffer's ear, and there's some sort of transaction or they're compromised, and that's what's going on in America.
Well, yesterday on MSNBC, I played the clip earlier on Morning Joe, former White House chief medical advisor Anthony Fauci, Mr. Science, claimed that there were more COVID-19 deaths and hospitalization in red states versus blue states. Now, he may be conveniently forgetting what happened in New York City throughout the spring of 2020. But what else has he missed when we look to the trampling of freedoms and rights, and now the consequences that we see that of children who were out of school, businesses that still have not recovered? I mean, red states look a lot more attractive when you look at the whole picture.
Yeah, I'll take freedom over that. And what he hasn't missed are talking points. That was a well-calculated talking point given to him by somebody who's from a think tank or somebody who's developed that through some clever polling. It was very well worded, and it was not by accident. They're just going to get him on to talk about that. Come on, they put that out. They got that's mainstream media. It's the deep state, and we're just supposed to get in line, and Pavlov's dog, they ring the bell and we come salivating, and that's exactly what they do. And that's why they, if you do any history on Dr. Fauci, he was, they were critical. The gay community was very critical of him during the AIDS epidemic when it first came out, and it has some similarities there in itself. So I'm very leery too of all of a sudden this disease just comes on the scene, like it was out there all along, and it was in this wet market in China, and then all of a sudden it just manifests itself and spreads to the world. Nobody should buy that. That is bogus. If it's out there, what barrier was broke that has never been broken in the past.
Right.
And so I dare say there isn't one other than the creation of it in a lab in Wuhan.
Well, Congressman Burchett, I'm with you in my concern of China. I think China is the greatest threat to the United States, really to the world, in the policies they're pursuing, and I think we're distracted by many things. But I want to switch topics because we're almost out of time, and because this is something you've been tracking. You have been tracking and speaking about the tragic shooting at the Christian school in Nashville last year, and some of the shooter's writings have been released. I talked about this yesterday on the program, and I focused on the fact that the FBI and the Nashville police had blocked the release of the full document. I didn't mention that the families of the victims and some associated with the school did not want those documents released either for fear of a copycat or re-traumatizing the victims. But my point was, why is this being treated differently than other mass shootings? What do you think?
I think because the little girl had mental issues. She was so-called transgender, which is a mental health issue in itself. It's a mental illness. It's not normal for someone want to mutilate their body to change sexes. That is just not normal. And it is you see it exploding now after COVID because the suggestion of it, these young people are very susceptible to suggestion. I guarantee you, she self-diagnosed herself off the computer. It does not fit the narrative that they put out, and it never does. And then they cover it up, and then we forget about it. And the FBI is complacent in this because they are compromised by a far left agenda. When Trump was in before, he cut the head off, but you got more than that. You got a lot beneath it. And that, I think he understands that very well this time. And he's got to go through these departments like Grant through Richmond. He has got to clean this up or we will lose our country. These folks are in charge of our security, right, and yet they're deciding for us what we can and cannot see. I don't buy that. I do not buy that one bit.
Very quick Very quickly, do you think we'll get the documents?
Possibly, but I think they'll either be mysteriously destroyed or they'll be doctored.
All right. Tim Burchett, always great to see you, my friend. Thanks for joining us.